All right, guys, welcome back this week to Pick Your Brains with Benjamin. This week, I have a very awesome guest who's also got a reasonably big following, and we're going to learn from her today. The person I brought you guys today is Miss Sri, who lives in is it Dallas, Texas?
Houston.
Houston, Texas. And were you originally from Florida?
Well, I was born in New Orleans, and then I would visit Miami from like the age of 2 weeks, 3 weeks old, and I lived there for 10 years.
Okay, that makes sense. So for the purposes of this record, we're just going to say you're from Louisiana originally.
I always claim Miami.
You're supposed to claim Louisiana. That's where you were born. But anyway, all right. So for today's interview, we're going to get to learn about some of Sri's background and how she became what we call a video content coach. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So I know you don't like this question because it's generic for interviews and everyone gets annoyed with this one, but don't think of this as a job interview. Just think of it as two people getting to know one another. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Sri, and how this journey began was that I started a business in 2019 because I needed to leave a legacy for my daughter. Her father had passed away in 2018, November. So I was like, hey, he didn't leave anything, but I will. And when I started my business, people kept telling me, you need testimonials. And then it was placed on my heart, hear their journey. So I was like starting the thought process. How do I interview people? How do I bring them live? Next thing I know, COVID happened, and I knew I needed to get visibility. And interviewing on Instagram Live, I was like, hey, I can do that. So I asked 9 people. The 10th one said yes. And that's how my Instagram series called Journey of an Entrepreneur was born. And I started interviewing people. I created a process, and along the way, I started interviewing people that had never done video, never did a live, and I was helping them. They just talked to me once and they had to go live with me. Next thing I know, I hit 100 lives, and I started working with my coach, who said, well, if you don't like your first business, what do you have a passion for? And I told her, and she was like, well, this is it. Out of those 100, you help 40 people. This is what you need to be doing. And so now I help solopreneurs who struggle with camera shyness by helping them gain the confidence so they can build their brand and their business. Because we all know that video is where people are moving towards. Apps are all moving towards that because you can build a connection. I just met recently with 2 followers of mine, and they were like, I feel like I've known you forever. Why? Because they have been following me for such a long time. And I asked them, why do you feel that? And they said, well, video has helped connect me even closer to you. So I would encourage anybody who's thinking about if they should add video to their strategy. It really does help.
Okay, so I'm glad that you told us that because I'm going to ask you a few questions, but there's one thing I just want to touch on, and that was with your story. Your story is a little similar to kind of what I was going through, but in 2019, I had just graduated with my bachelor's degree after 9.5 years, of having to work between jobs that I didn't really like, but that, they at least helped me to get to what I have right now. I started with on some level of entrepreneurship back in 2020 with similar to you, but I got more serious about it last year while being on the LinkedIn platform and just kind of seeing how people post content on a daily basis. It was met with mixed results. It was met with mixed emotions because do you know what most people were telling me?
What?
Get a job. Don't worry about building a business. Do that later on in life.
Why?
Because what I realize now, especially with somebody who I've known since kindergarten, is what is the type of community that I came in, where there was a lot of money. And what do you, in families where, they come from kind of more upper middle class, maybe you've seen this or not, what do you think most of their parents are drilling into their heads from a young age?
Of course. I mean, my mom is not supportive of this, but it's really funny that you say that because I mean, I look at when I hit 100 lives, I hit 2,000 followers on two platforms, both Instagram and LinkedIn. But when I hit 2,000 followers, so when I look at my following on Instagram, my first 100, 200 were people I knew. After that, it's all people I didn't know. On LinkedIn, it was a lot of it was a mixture between people I know and people I just connected. I didn't even know. I didn't even care if you were the CEO of a Fortune 500. I was still connecting with you. But when I hit 2,000, then I started getting more strategic. I started getting more active on LinkedIn. And that's when currently, if you're listening to this today, I currently have almost 6,200. And then on my Instagram, it's like 2,800. But that's because first, I'm just getting I'm learning the different platforms and what's resonating when it comes to content creation. And then two, just the type of person that I am, who I'm attracting, it's just faster on LinkedIn versus Instagram.
2 weeks ago on LinkedIn, I hit 5,000 finally connections. And the particular person I will not refer to, but basically was bawling me out over this. He's like, you have over 5,000 people, but what use are they? I'm like, if you pitch the correct digital product, you can make money off those people. There's a whole strategy behind this. And unfortunately, Justin and I just spoke about an article that we're probably going to do our next episode on potentially, but the theory of winners quitting, or the whole idea of quitting something, right? Which doesn't always look bad, but we were drilled into our heads from a young age, don't ever quit.
I mean, I have a friend that wrote a book called 99 Reasons to Quit. And, it's quitting things that are holding you back.
Yeah. And that's what I've realized over this last year is that I need to be doing is there are some people who are down for my podcast and this video project and want to participate in it. And then there's other people who just want to basically talk nonsense to me saying, oh, you're never publishing anything. I'm like, no, I'm publishing things. I just choose not to say X, Y, and Z to you because you're going to shoot the idea down and say, and not support it. So why should I tell you? So the first question I would like to ask you is this, because I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. What did you use your Agile and Scrum certification for in the beginning?
So in the beginning, it's I was part of a project which I helped launch within the 9 to 5. So I had to do all of these certifications. So I understand leading a project. I understand taking it from ground zero. I had to be part of the testing because it was a software. We were using a CRM. So I understand having to go through the whole process. And that was something that was a requirement for me.
Oh, by the way, speaking of project management, what do you think I'm doing with this whole project right now? And I just recently put this on my resume after planning it for 7 months last year. Project management.
I think that you're gaining visibility for yourself and also telling people you can do it. But I also wanted to go back to your statement where you said, where somebody was asking, well, what are you going to do with 5,000 people? The question is what are you doing with 100? There are millionaires making money off of 100 followers. And there are people who have 1 million followers making thousands of dollars. What's the difference between the mindset of both? The other one realizes the value of relationships with their people. So they have a very close relationship and know how to drive sales to them, bring value. Basically, you're bringing value that these people are repeat buyers versus the million The person with 1 million followers is only focused on numbers. So they're not putting that value. So they're not attracting the right people. So nobody wants to invest in them. That's just me. You might, if anybody
Now,
who's listening to this, you want to come for me, we can have a discussion. I'm just saying that this is like, I've interviewed over 200 people. They all say the same thing. You don't need a large following to make money.
oh no, I'm not trying to do a large following. In fact, I'm just happy it grew to this point. And, even if it's 5,000 people, my eventual goal is to come up with, and I'll say this right now, an e-learning.
Mhm.
I was actually discussing that with, everyone on the podcast, which is, there's some different ideas that are floating around. One of them would be, an e-learning for, company. One of them would be an e-learning on how to work with adults on the spectrum as an example, because I don't think, unfortunately, in my life experience, not a lot of people really do understand autism. It's more understood now, but if you can imagine what it was like for us growing up in the 80s and the 90s, everyone literally thought you were mentally retarded if they heard this. And unfortunately, for me, at the very least, it's not been fun to educate people on this, because either they don't want to listen or it doesn't affect them until it's a family member.
And you know
or
what?
their child is diagnosed.
You know what though? It should be, and we should change that mindset. It's like anything that we have in today's society, whether it was women equality, domestic violence, sex trafficking. I mean, we can go on with a list of things that before we were not talking about, and now we're openly talking about. And you know what? Just like how you're feeling, like, I don't want to waste my time educating. No, this is a reason to educate, because there's a lot of people who don't understand autism. And even the little bit that I know, and just even talking with you and interacting with you, I've learned so much because I don't know. And I always walk into a mindset of, let me understand the person, let me ask questions. Maybe I might ask a question that's a little far off, maybe offending, but you have to understand, I didn't know any better. And when I learn, I know better. So I'm not going to ask that crazy question.
I was just saying, back in the 90s and the 2000s and the previous decade, I don't mean like that. I'm just saying, with some people who don't want to learn, it could become quite exhausting. My guest last week, Madeline, actually, who's a licensed social worker, was willing to learn about it because that's her own industry. So social workers have a better understanding of this than, or, a parent of the child that has this. And in fact, 2 months ago, I had an Indian woman in New Jersey reach out to me asking me some questions, about what's the best way to help their daughter. And she also happened to sell products. So it was actually nice when you made the visibility comment. I have an interesting question about, I think, one of the companies you worked for, because when you mentioned sales, I think you probably picked up a lot in your work career, correct?
Yes.
Unique Industrial Product. Was that a face-to-face sales job or door-to-door?
I was a sales support team member. I wasn't in sales. I only did sales in 2015. Like, I was always sales support. It's when I hit 2015, I hit a roadblock, which was that I couldn't grow in the company. And the only other option was to go into sales. And I did, and I hated it. And that was door to door. Like, I had to walk into businesses. I had to get yelled at, thrown things at. I mean, I learned about people so quickly. And
Sounds like me in retail. So you can imagine what retail was like for me. And unfortunately, without a college degree, why do you think I had such a longer history within that industry?
But you know what? I actually liked retail because at least they were coming for, obviously you had to take in the crap that they come, but you didn't have to go search for the sale, like, versus
No.
Like, this was literally, I walked into the business and I had to build a relationship like that or get kicked out.
as I was finishing my degree, those were the jobs that wanted me to come consider their opportunities. And then even their hiring managers, after the interviews, I either rejected those or they said they get back to me. Nothing ever dissipated, but it's fine because now I'm at a medical group. And, you know, for basically a really brief sum up of this, I'm actually at least remotely happy with this one because, well, not remotely happy. I'm happy enough with it because there's value that I bring to, you know, working with 7 physicians. For example, honestly, do you think most of these physicians really want to talk to patients? No. Doctors, you know, don't really want to handle the administrative stuff. They'd rather be doctors. So in that sense, when we talk about value, there's value within a medical group for like the customer service end with them because it allows them to do what they need to do.
Absolutely. I mean,
So in this field, you know, the stuff that I'm doing right now will eventually come into handy because, I've realized I like making content. When you worked in the energy industry, and it looks like you were at Real Energy Solutions, walk us through what you did there.
so I was I was sales support and then I did sales. So that is what helped me carry into what I do today, because those soft skills of connecting with individuals, building a relationship, asking the questions during the interview or discovery process, and then understanding how to, keep up with all of the individuals that I am connecting with so I can follow up. Like those same soft skills are helping me with what I do now, because when I was booking guests, I had to follow up. I had to create calendar invites. I had to come up with a system that helps, because that's what I help when I coach my clients in my 6-week coaching, or even the 1-hour program, 1 hour that you can pay with me. That's what, if you want to learn, how can I create a better process of booking people, getting them to commit so that, because I will tell you transparently, I would book people and they would want to get out of it. Now, because I have a process and I'm pretty much like, I follow up, they do not, there's less cancellations. And that's a huge thing. I know things happen in life, but I always encourage people. I'm like, because of technology, we can go live anywhere in the world as long as we have the equipment, which is either a cell phone or your laptop. You have your mic. I have my mic over here and I have lights. I can make any setup work. Like, this is not my house. I'm in an Airbnb, but I can make anything work. And that's the mindset that I have. And that's what I tell people, even my guests. You can be anywhere. We can go live anywhere.
That's eventually we are going to probably do the live format, as I've seen with some of the people that, I found you through, like, for example, Robert and Doreen. That is a goal of mine for right now, because I would like to, I like the recording option, because what I'm going to do afterwards is this is going to migrate to my YouTube channel, to make so that my best friend out in California, who's going to do the editing, can cut everything down. And I'll show you what I have on my YouTube channel, post this with the interview, so you can, so you can see that it's uploaded. Because and the other thing, by the way, you just hit on something that I was actually just writing as a Medium article. I interviewed Courtney about 3 to 4 weeks ago. And one of the things that, she and Shanae Moret always talk about, not just video, but even on their podcasts, was a few things that you just mentioned, which is, I remember from hers, when you're building a business, now everything can be really done online. You don't need, I was just writing, you don't need the expensive overhead of frigging real estate, at least just yet. And I'm going to give you a little side story. And then I wanted to ask you some analyst-based questions. So I have a little side story. Back in 2018, when I was enrolled here at my college, I went on a job interview for a seasonal administrative assistant position. The 2 women that I interviewed with were both from the accounting background, and they were, they started up an accounting tax firm. So they were looking for someone during tax season. I didn't get that job, but what they basically said to me was this: They stayed at home 9 years to be able to afford buying a place. And unfortunately, what I'm about to say is, which part of the country do you think I'm in? East Coast. The cost of living is very tricky up here to even run a business. And this is with very expensive real estate up here. It's not impossible, because clearly, within the 9-year time period, now it would be 12. They were able to buy something, but it took a lot of staying at home first.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I moved to Houston, because I was living in Miami, and majority of the time I did live with family and friends, and then I lived on my own. When I moved to Houston, I was living on my own. I mean, living with my parents, and I still do. I'm now getting to the point where I'm ready to like do Airbnbs and stuff, but it wasn't always like that. Like I started bootstrapping way before I started my business.
Renting out Airbnbs.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to
that's something I want to eventually get to myself, which is the Airbnb idea.
But I was starting to bootstrap for my business way before I started my business. And then when I really started getting into the business, I bootstrapped even more. And then when I lost my job in December of 2021, that's when I paid off everything. So everything I have, I paid off.
So speaking of, I modified the question that you just hit on. First, how did you fall into the analyst role?
It was when I worked for one of my jobs that it was a sales support role, and I was doing a lot of analyzing. And then when I moved into this new job, which was, I worked for them as an oil and gas.
Nalco Champion Ecolab, where you were a financial analyst too, or Champion X?
I don't really say the names because I don't want to bring it up.
That's fine.
I just will say I worked for the oil and gas company, and the role that I had was to roll out their CRM and then go into, I was sales support, and I did some analysis for them. So, I mean, during that job is when I started my business. And that's when I started to get really focused on what I do. And 6 months before I got laid off, I was even more focused. I was working and doing, working on my business, learning, growing. And as a result, I got laid off, but that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a blessing.
No, because I remember that in December. And by the way, I've been working with data from going back to the Goodwill by just basically entering it since 2014. So the reason I was mainly asking you about analysts is because what I'd like you to answer next is, what would you recommend to aspiring data analysts? So I am in that category from the educational aspect, but this would only be for, right now, because eventually with all the data, it's something that could be freelanced with possibly.
Always, anything that you can do, you could possibly freelance, like everything and anything. And I would say, just be open to learning, like be open to paying to learn, and be open to free learning, because the more you know, the more valuable you become. And it's like anybody else on social media. There's so many video content coaches, so many video camera confidence coaches. But what makes you different is your story, your experience. All of us have similar experiences, but we all bring our own to the table.
So my next question on video, because I was in the process of writing an article about this, I've written a few articles for Medium about this, and I'll share those with you as well afterwards. But I was looking at both the career coach and the business coach, and even today's article was from a content coach earlier in the week who did a viral video trying to justify why she charges, but not saying what the particular service is. So the one that I just posted to Medium today was basically saying, I don't have an issue if a coach wants to charge. There's obvious reasons for it. But if you're going to make a viral video for a place like LinkedIn, instead of trying to say, this is why I charge because, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm charging for this reason so I can, serve my community and make primo content. Please give us a reason, what you're charging for, why the charge is that, and what do we get as a consumer as well? Because making a blanket statement isn't going to get you sales. And I know this from just working in retail, where you had to push things.
Well, I mean, so we have to be realistic. We all have families, we all have a roof. I mean, like, you may not have everything that I have, but we all have to be able to provide, right? Like food.
Well, even me for
shelter,
myself right now
clothes.
at the moment, yes.
Yeah, we have to make some kind of form of money. Money is an energy that we take and put back. Now, how I see it is that I work with people and where they're at. I do have a 6-week coaching program, and I do have a one-on-one. And based on where you are at and your budget, I can work with you to make sure we can get you to get through what you are looking for, which is growing in your confidence and getting in front of the camera. But it also is about understanding and being comfortable with yourself and your story. So I work with people. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have a one size fit all for everybody. I work with them. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that actually does make sense. And you are very genuine about it. Now, I agree that for when somebody's charging for their service with what you just said, that makes sense. Because what I see is you're being genuine. The article that I wrote, basically, long story short, and a previous article that I wrote, if I were going to make an investment between the two coaches, I would more likely go with someone like you or a business-oriented coach, because for the long term, that's learning something. The article that I just finished today was basically saying I had job developers, and honestly, a career coach doesn't really make sense, because what do you think if you don't get the job at the end of it, and they're charging money? They're not going to be happy if the
No,
result isn't the outcome they were hoping for, which is me getting hired. Therefore, the business coach would make optimal sense in the right situation.
right. And you have to choose what's best for you. I'm not going to I will always promote my business, but I
Yeah,
also understand, where are you at in your mindset and your business? Like, if you think you need to work with a mindset coach or a life coach before coming to me, I am that person who will say, I get it, because it's about relationship and understanding. Like, people sometimes make a commitment to pay and then they don't follow through. And I don't like that either. I don't want you to waste your money, but also I am about making sure that you get the results that you asked, that you set up. These are your goals. And if we're not hitting them, we're going to work. But I also do believe you get more money when you have repeat business. So why do you have repeat business? Is because you have a relationship. The relationship has to be built first before somebody invests in you. Because I have had people who've invested in me because they really liked me and we talked a few times, but then they didn't apply what they learned. And then I'm like, I feel bad because I think that maybe what I shared wasn't good enough, or maybe that it wasn't the right time for them. And of course, the most coaches will be like, yeah, I'll take your money. It's no big deal. But I actually think about those people. There's only a few people that have done that where they didn't apply what they paid for. And I wonder, why didn't they? But I always keep in touch with everybody. I'm one of those people. I will find a way, even if it's 3 times a year, I will always keep in touch with you.
that's good. I'm glad you said that. So my last question, because then there's going to be an off record question or two that I'm going to ask, is what made you choose video content coach to go that direction?
Well, it goes back to the beginning when you asked me, tell us a little bit about you. And it was that I started working with my mentor, my coach, and she was pointing out, hey, like, you have helped out of those 100 people, you helped 40, and you really light up when you talk about it and talking about going live. This is what you should focus on. So that's where it started. And it was in June of 2021.
Ah, okay. So yeah, that makes sense. And I like what you said about the whole going live, because one question I would ask for somebody like, for a product like this, I do want to go live. Which platform would be the best to do live from? Would you recommend Instagram, or, starting there, or would you, and is there a way to migrate an Instagram live to, is there a way to migrate an Instagram live to LinkedIn?
So I always ask, who is your target audience? Who is your customer avatar? Where are they located? Because where you start, where you are in posting is where is your avatar? Where's your potential client? So if it's on Facebook, then you need to go on Facebook Live. If it's Instagram, go on Instagram Live. And I'm always a big pusher of LinkedIn. But if you're not on LinkedIn, you're not active on LinkedIn, then it doesn't make sense to go live on LinkedIn. You can put yourself out there. So to answer your question is, who are you targeting, and where are they located? Because if you know where they are, that's where you need to be. If it's on TikTok, then you need to go get 1,000. And anybody you bring on as a guest, they have to have 1,000 followers too. And go live on TikTok. You will get business. Like once you start promoting to yourself and you will slowly get the business. That's why it's a very good question, but a question that always goes back to, who are you serving and where are they found?
All right. And on that note, thanks for stopping by today. I
Thank
really appreciated listening to your story. I know our audience, I know my audience and I definitely learned a good amount today. The backstory, why you do what you do. I want to say, everyone, have a good weekend, and we'll see you at the next one. Justin. I don't know where he is, but I should probably just hit stop video, right?
Yeah. No, you would hit the stop record.
That's why I'm wondering where he is, because he must have stepped away.
Well, we can end it here. I just want to say thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me on. It
Oh,
was
no
very
problem.
kind of you.
All right. Thank you for also agreeing to this. And I'm going to give him a few more minutes. So if you want to step off, you can. All right.
All right. Take care.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye. Justin. Justin. Justin, are you there? I really need you back. Where did he? Justin, are you there? Hey, Justin. Hey, Justin.